It is time for the Writer's Block, our weekly look at all things related to sports. I'm Jenny Carlson here in the studios at the Oklahoman, joined by Cedric Golden in the studios of the Austin American-Statesman. Hello, friend.
What's going on, Jen?
Is the AC going there in Austin?
All I can say is at the plush offices of the Austin American-Statesman, the air conditioning is just fine, thank you.
Well, that has become a question there in Austin. Air conditioning, who has it? Who doesn't? It's AC Gate, and we're going to lead with that today, Cedric, because LSU came to Austin over the weekend for that big non-conference matchup. Game day was in town, lots of attention, primetime matchup. And after the game, which was won by LSU, Ed Orgeron, the coach of the Tigers, saying, "Hey, we didn't have any air conditioning in our locker room." What's the latest? Is there AC in the visitors' locker room? Was it on? Did it malfunction? What in the world is going on here, Cedric?
Well, Texas was so moved by his announcement that they sent out a statement from athletic director Chris Del Conte saying the AC is in good working order. And we didn't receive any complaints on game day and didn't receive any from La Tech. So I guess all's well that ends well. I'm wondering why Ed Orgeron went there. Maybe because his guys on defense were falling out every play and cramping up, which coincided with some really nice Texas drives, kind of some momentum stoppers, if you will. Was it gamesmanship? Was it AC, or were they just dehydrated? I don't know. But, I saw him described as a college football's version of Fred Flintstone. And I thought that was kind of cool, but something struck me as odd. Fred Flintstone never complained about air conditioning. Why should Ed Orgeron?
Maybe he had his dinosaur friends fanning him back in the day. Maybe that's what Fred Flintstone had. I don't know. Yeah, didn't this all come about because basically there was talk that the Tigers were they weren't cramping, that they were faking some of the cramping to try to slow Texas down. Close game in the end. And then LSU brings up, well, we didn't have AC. Now you've had some coaches, Cedric, I've seen some coaches around the country say, hey, we know a lot of visitors' locker rooms aren't going to be plush. They aren't going to have the amenities. We bring our own fans. We bring our own AC units when that sort of thing might be in question. Heaters, those sorts of things when it gets cold. I don't know what the truth is. I have a hard time believing that some of these interior places, which are not well ventilated, it is very hot in this part of the country, that there's no AC, but I don't know. Are you going to ask to tour the visitors' locker room next time that this stuff happens? It seems a little bit, I don't know. It all seems a little overwrought to me that this is the topic of the day.
I'm not asking that because the only time I've been in that visitors' locker room from what I can remember, and I've been on this beat since like 2002, Mike Leach, when he called the Red Raiders sheep, and that was a good rant. I just don't remember it being hot in there. And if you're Texas, what's your motivation for doing that? Yeah. And I'm not trying to be a homer here, Jen, but they're going to Baton Rouge next season. So why would they turn the AC off knowing that they got to go play the Bayou Bengals down there in 2020? So to me, I thought it was all about nothing. I think he just mentioned it in passing, and it took on a life of its own. Was it hot in that locker room? I don't know. I was in the press box, and it was nice and chilly in that press box, Jen. I felt great. I had a cold, frosty beverage and some popcorn. I had a little bit of everything. So I was living the life of Riley. I'm sorry those guys had to suffer through a hot game in September in Texas. Guess what? Most of those players are from Houston anyway. They know what they signed up for. Yeah. And for me, I just thought it was kind of petty of Orgeron to even bring that up.
Don't we all pick and choose where we're going to watch these games? I mean, essentially, it's sort of like when I was in high school band and, the tuba players would say, man, really heavy, it's hot, oh my gosh. I said, there's a reason I decided to play the flute and not the tuba. So we all decide where we're gonna endure these Saturdays. Are we gonna be on the field, in the stands, at home, press box, whatever? So you make those decisions, and then sometimes you got to live with maybe some uncomfortableness. But Cedric, maybe the bigger issue here, maybe we should be talking about this instead a lot more, is the fact that that game that Texas lost was a chance for the Big 12 to get a marquee non-conference win. There haven't been a lot of non-conference marquee matchups for the Big 12, so there haven't been a ton of opportunities. Now, that kind of rests on Iowa State having Iowa and Ames this week to get a really big sort of Power 5 win. There just haven't been many great matchups in non-conference, and now the Big 12's looking around saying, we really don't have much to hang our hat on in non-conference.
That's a great point. I think they missed out on a great opportunity to land a blow for the Big 12. Texas beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, and if they could have followed that up with a win over LSU, that not only would have made them a top 5, top 6 team in the nation as of this conversation, but it also would have struck a blow for the mighty Big 12 against the oh so powerful SEC. And now Texas is left having to think of the prospect of maybe having to go 10-1 down the stretch, Jen?
Yeah.
Or 9-1 down the stretch to get to the Big 12 title game, which I still think they're going to do, but it's going to be a lot harder. I didn't think a Big 12 team would make the CFP at the beginning of the year, and the fact that Texas lost doesn't help the conference's cause. Iowa beats Iowa. If Iowa State beats Iowa, does anyone really care, Jen?
Yeah.
That's not a marquee win. I mean, Iowa is a middle-of-the-road Big Ten team. They're not Ohio State. They're not Penn State. They're middle of the road, so let's call that what it is.
And
it'd be a nice win, but it's not a great win.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it would be for Iowa State a great win with an in-state rival. But yeah, you're right. But that's where we're left in the Big 12. We just don't have a ton of these great matchups, and at this point, that's kind of what's left on the table for being the big win for the Big 12. So I think you're right, Cedric. I think as it relates to the playoff, I think any team out of the Big 12 that expects to be in contention truly at the end of the year, they got to run the table from here, because there's just not a lot, unless you're looking at a scenario where you would lose to the team, as we saw Oklahoma do a year ago, lose to Texas in the regular season, then beat them at the end of the year in the Big 12 championship game. Maybe that gets a team there. But it's going to be hard to get in the playoff otherwise, because the Big 12 just doesn't have that non-conference strength of schedule to really boost itself up and say, look at these teams that we beat. They just don't have those wins, and they aren't going to, because we're about out of non-conference play at this point. Conference play starting next week as Oklahoma State will head to Texas. We know that game looms. So a lot of questions out there for how strong is the Big 12. A team's going to really have to make almost an undefeated run, I think, to be in that conversation.